Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Before we start this interview, I'm very excited to announce that this video is sponsored by DistroKid. For those who are unfamiliar, DistroKid is a service that musicians use to get their music into Spotify and Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, and all the streaming services and online stores. I think it's the best service that does this. I really do love it. I recommend it to everyone because you, as the artist, just pay one upfront fee for the year and you get to upload as much music as you want. And the best part is they don't take any commission. So you keep 100% of the earnings. So if you're an artist that is looking to get their music into those stores, looking to put out some new music, follow the DistroKid link in the description of this video. You'll get a discount on your first year's fee and you'll be supporting Chad's Home all at once. So it's a win-win. So yeah. Thank you very much again for tuning in. Without further ado, here is my interview with Gaston Leone from the Roxy. How's it going? Welcome back to Chad's Home, Quarantine Edition, hanging out in my apartment, drinking some Topo Chico, shout out. And today I have a very special guest by the name of Gaston Leone. He is the talent buyer at the world famous Roxy Theatre here in Los Angeles, California. It needs no introduction, but for those unfamiliar, the Roxy has been around since the 70s and hosted, icons of music from Patti Smith to Neil Young to Lou Reed, Bob Marley. I mean, the list goes on, and it remains a staple of the live industry today. A lot due to this man right here. So it is very good to have you. Thank you so much for coming on.
But of course, happy to be here.
Great. So I wanted to just kind of jump in. For those who are unfamiliar with what a talent buyer is or what a talent buyer does, could you give kind of a brief rundown on what your gig is and what it kind of entails?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the macro scale, we are basically calendar organizers, right? We manage the calendar for the venue. At the Roxy, generally our target is about 250 shows a year. So I'm in charge of programming all of those shows, holding dates for all the artists, and basically sending out negotiating deals and offers with agents and managers, sometimes with the bands themselves. And then on the more granular scale, basically, I'm definitely a music fan first. That's where all of this comes from, at least from my end. And so I'm always looking for bands that I'm super into and new artists that I want to help try to develop and whatnot. And, obviously having the platform with a bigger company like Golden Voice and AEG that, we can kind of give artists an artist development path forward. Right. And in a lot of those cases, playing the Roxy is the very first step for that.
And what was the path for you to kind of get to this point? Because I know you're a musician as well, right? Is that...
Yeah. I mean, I was always musician might be generous, but since high school, I was playing in bands. I was started playing guitar when I was like 10 years old, and so I was always very interested in the world. I actually went to school for aviation. I was going to be an air traffic controller.
Oh, cool.
So clearly that worked out really well.
Right.
Basically, so I went to school. It's a 4-year program. I went to school in Colorado and kind of grew up there. And basically, the semester that I graduated and was applying to be an air traffic controller with the federal government, they furloughed all the air traffic controllers and put on a hiring freeze for 2 years.
Oh, jeez.
Impeccable timing. It was really great. But basically, after that, I worked for a couple tech companies, just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and never really considered music as a career. And really, the turning point for that was the first time I went to Coachella. I had a friend at Paradigm. She was an agent, and it was the first year that she had an artist performing at Coachella, and she invited me out. I think it was in 2014. And I came to visit her, and we went to the show, and it sounds incredibly cheesy, but it was life-changing. And basically from that point, I was like, all right, I absolutely have to do this. So I got an internship at a small club in Denver called the Larimer Lounge. I was street teaming for them, marketing intern, working the box office, and then slowly but surely started taking on more and more roles. And basically ended up doing everything from bartending to security to production managing, and then eventually they gave me the keys to the calendar, and I was able to start booking some shows.
Wow, that's great. In Denver, what's that iconic venue? Red Rocks isn't too far.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. I've never been there, but that's on my bucket list for shows to go. Have you been there?
It's arguably the reason I'm so in love with live music. I mean, I started going to shows there when I was like 14. I went and saw, I think it was Sparta, Dashboard Confessional, and Weezer at Red Rocks.
Damn. What a lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Radiohead back in like 2005, Daft Punk in 2007. I mean, it was just so many iconic shows that I went to in my youth, and that kind of fueled the passion for live music for me. Was, you know, seeing, and I would go see anybody there. I saw Cyndi Lauper, I saw REM. I would go to any show at Red Rocks just because the setting is so incredible.
And then it brought you eventually to LA. And so how long have you been with the Roxy, or with Golden Voice doing the Roxy?
It is about a little over 2.5 years now.
2.5 years.
October of this year will be 3 years. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned it in the intro a little bit, but I really just applaud how you guys have kept the Roxy so, I don't know, so important with the new generation coming in. I feel like so many kids know the Roxy, love the Roxy, are striving to play the Roxy, and it just stays, you know, front of mind as far as up and coming venues, and even for a lot of bigger artists who want to do underplays. I saw one of the best nights of my music life was in 2015. I saw Mumford & Sons there because I did an underplay before their like Wilder Mind album came out, and it was just like, yeah, so epic. But what is your like kind of approach to booking? Like, what are you kind of looking for when you're filling up the calendar?
I mean, step one is always, it starts with the music. You know, I strive to look at a calendar and say, wow, I legitimately am excited to see these artists live. You know, it's I think especially in LA, it's such a competitive market because there really are so many great venues basically of the same capacity as the Roxy. So sometimes you got to take some risks. Sometimes you have to look at an artist and maybe they can't sell out the Roxy right now. But if I feel passionate about bringing them in and trying to bring them into the Golden Voice family and hopefully, you know, help build them up in the market and whatnot, I'm down to give it a shot and, you know, stack it with some locals and give it a lot of TLC and you know, do our best to make sure that the artists and the fans are happy in that case, and kind of give them a path forward to, you know, help build. The other cool thing about the Roxy, you know, kind of like you said, is you have these giant underplays like, you know, cough cough 1975 from last year. But it's a really cool situation that I'm in, where I get to work with such a wide range of artists, where we can, you know, we have a Rex Orange County come in and do a big underplay before selling out 2 Shrine auditoriums. Right. But I also get to work with the most up-and-coming bands and do the first plays for, I don't know, Pink Sweats and Ella May, and, you know, their very first LA shows were at the Roxy.
That's
so
amazing.
It's really cool to kind of work with everybody, you know?
Yeah. And it seems like you do that across the genre board as well. Like, I think I've seen, I mean, in the last year, amazing punk shows, amazing indie rock shows, amazing hip hop shows. So are you personally just a fan of kind of all genres and like to book everything?
Oh, absolutely. It's, I think, you know, if I go to the bread and butter of like what I got into at an early age, it's probably a lot more kind of punk, definitely a lot of hip hop. And so it kind of comes from that point, but, you know, I'm definitely a big pop music fan. I definitely love a lot of up and coming R&B. You know, I definitely had a hardcore and metal phase and stuff too. So there's definitely some acts in that world that I want to bring in. You know, at the end of the day, I don't want to be held back by genres or anything. I want to be able to bring in just what I think is good quality artists.
Right. Is there anyone in particular that you're enjoying right now that's an up-and-coming artist that you have your eye on? Probably a lot.
Oh, man, there's a lot. Especially during quarantine, it feels like everybody decided to drop new music, which I think is genius. You know, what else do we have to do right now than to get into new content?
Right, right.
I'm really enjoying this band Yumi Zuma. They just put out a new record in March that I think is really, really fun and kind of uplifting for kind of a crappy time. So I've definitely been jamming that a lot. There's another band called Why Bonnie. They just released an EP that I think is really good. Yeah, it's been kind of refreshing. I mean, obviously this period of no shows really sucks, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to recharge the batteries a little bit and think a little more creatively and get to explore artists a little bit more. So
for sure. So Lou and Nick Adler, do they still own the Roxy?
Yes.
Got it. And so are they pretty do you work with them pretty closely?
So Nick actually works for Golden Voice. He's one of the director of festival operations. But as far as Roxy operations go, they are very, very hands-off.
Nice.
Lou does a couple of private events a year that, I work on clearing dates with him directly on that. But outside of that, they're very hands-off. But the Adler family comes to a lot of shows, which I will take as an endorsement. I'm like, all right, cool.
You're doing good. Nice. So does Golden Voice actually own certain venues like the Fonda or El Rey, or do they just kind of come in to help operate it and to help with the booking and presenting?
It's a booking and operating deal for the most part. We don't own the buildings. We have rental agreements with them, and then there are the actual physical owners of the building and the property.
Right.
So basically with each venue, we have contracts and negotiations with them, and it's, hey, we have a booking agreement for X amount of years. These are the terms, and it kind of goes from there.
Got it. That makes sense. And then do you help book any of the other venues?
Roxy is definitely my focus. Last year, I did probably 25 or so shows outside of the Roxy, which was fun. The Glass House is not officially a Golden Voice venue, but we definitely have a great relationship with them, so we can go put shows in that room. I've been doing some smaller scale stuff at El Cid for sometimes when maybe a band's not exactly ready for a Roxy, they want to play it a little more conservative. El Cid in Silver Lake is a really cool spot, and we've done some really fun shows there.
Cool.
And then a couple in Orange County, just basically any opportunities that make sense for us, I definitely am down to look at.
Nice. And festivals I wanted to talk about because I think Golden Voice has become, famous for the biggest festivals in the world, which is Coachella and Stagecoach and everything else they do. Do you have any hand in that, or is that kind of a separate team within Golden Voice that looks over booking for those?
It's definitely a separate team. What I do appreciate about the way that we operate is I think everyone values everyone's internal opinions a lot as far as artist trajectory and music taste and everything else. And so it's a really collaborative effort of if you look at Tropicalia, it's no accident that a lot of those bands have already played, Roxy and El Rey and Fonda.
Right.
And so I think we really try to curate it that way of like, hey, these are, it's not just a bunch of random acts on the festival. These are acts that we're building with, and we want to continue to work with.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I never even really thought about it that way, but it does seem like it's not just about throwing shows and selling out shows. It's about artist development with what you guys do and putting them in the right venues and doing the steps, playing Roxy and then El Rey or Fonda and kind of up through it. So that's got to be fun to actually have more of a, more of an impact on the trajectory, like you were saying earlier. That's got to...
I think that's part of the key to our success is to be able to look at it from the artist standpoint, from the management standpoint, from to have that additional level of empathy and being able to look at it from their view of like, hey, what's best for them? Like, I'm not, you may hear stories about like shady promoters and like that kind of thing. And to me, I used to play in bands. I was, fortunate enough to tour a little bit. At least I can see it a lot more from the artist perspective. And I just want to provide them with, the best experience possible. And that's always what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's, you hear a lot about entry level bands, right? When they first start out, they do a lot of kind of pay to play venues and have to do like all that type of booking. Do you have advice on if bands should go for that in the early days or just try to stay away?
The best advice I can give anybody, and this is kind of what I did too, was do everything yourself. Learn every single facet of the music industry on your own. Learn about the deals, make relationships with local promoters, make relationships with other bands. Take the initiative to do that all on your own and learn as much as you possibly can on your own. I think a lot of times, especially up and coming artists, they release music, they're playing some shows, but they kind of have this level of expectation of like, oh man, if I just had a manager or an agent that could come help me break through that wall. And I think we've reached a point of, obviously it's a great age to be a musician. Everyone has access to record. It's never been more accessible to anybody. All you need is an interface and a computer basically at this point.
Right.
But at the same time, you're reaching a level of saturation of like, how do you break through that? And from my perspective, a manager or an agent isn't necessarily going to do that for you. I think you have to start doing that on your own, and then people are going to start knocking on your door.
Right. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. So with that, I think a lot of people are asking, a lot of bands are asking, how do I get on those bills? How do I get on those? How could I get to playing Coachella? How could I get to playing the Roxy, playing the Fonda, all these things?
There is some natural timing to it. There also is a level of maybe ingenuity and a little more drive from the artist side that they could be taking on. Like, when I was playing in a band, I created a fake management company, for example. It's like
nice.
Gaston at milehighfi.com, and I would send it out as like the manager of the band, but it's just me.
That's smart. That's really smart.
But you slowly start to you tinker with the email approaches. You don't want to send too much, but you don't want to send too little. You start to see what other artists are sending, maybe talking to other agents about how they're pitching artists. And I think it's a little bit of trial and error with that.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it, I think, to a band that's like, hey, there are some bills at the Roxy. We think we'd be a great support act for so-and-so show. I love that. I love when people hit me up about that because A, they're excited about the show. And so, clearly they're going to be an added value. They're going to help promote. They're going to, make it a little bit more special, I think. And so I'm always looking for local acts to help support stuff. Sometimes my hands are tied with that because maybe the act is taking a support act on the road and they only want to have one opener for the show, or there's at the end of the day, it's kind of the headliner's decision as to what we do with support. But I want to be an advocate. I want to help bands get the support slots and help build up that way. I think that's the first step towards kind of headlining the Roxy on your own, is like getting a nice support slot on a good bill.
Got it. Yeah. That's great advice. Very tangible advice. So look out for bills at the Roxy that you think you'd be a good partner.
If you don't see support on it, hit us up. We'll see what we can do.
I love that. What do you think of the festival space? What's your opinion on that? Do you think it's helping or hurting the kind of small venue arena, or what's your opinion on all these big festivals kind of popping up?
I mean, I think there was definitely a level of saturation with the major festivals, especially the multi-genre ones, where it's not a secret that a lot of them end up looking the same. It ends up being like a very homogenous blend of, all these acts are playing all the same festivals.
Right.
I think the approach with some of the smaller scale festivals that we've done is definitely the move in this era, where there's so many other ones of, hey, we're trying to get everything. And then we ended up doing it didn't end up happening, but Cruel World, this kind of like dark wave, goth, post-punk festival. It's, I think something that's a lot more focused like that and a lot more niche definitely brings a lot more excitement. And obviously it's a smaller scale festival. It's not 100,000 people, but I think that's a more interesting approach in this current situation.
I hear you. So, there's a ton of positives with what you do. I'm sure you've seen some of the most iconic artists and have a million stories of shows and bands that you got to see and book. But what are some of the challenges that people might not think of when they might want to pursue a career in talent buying?
I think it's really insane how time consuming it is. And I've had some time to reflect on that during the quarantine of like, wow, my entire life was shows.
Right.
You know, during the week, I'm probably in the office. But pre-COVID, it would have been, you know, start answering emails at 7:30, 8 in the morning, do that through 8 o'clock at night, and then you go to a show.
Yeah.
Probably not home till midnight, 1 a.m., and then you go and do it all over again. And, you know, it ends up
Crazy.
being, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 hours a week given on any given week. And so I think a lot of times, and I looked at it like this too at the beginning of like, oh, you know, it must be so cool to work in music. And then you go do it and it's like, you got to commit. There is a level of work ethic, and there are 1,000 people behind you also trying to do the same thing. And, you know, I'm a pretty firm believer that you just gotta bust your ass, and every single opportunity that presents itself, you know, take advantage of it. Figure out a way, you know, even never be above a job. Never look at it as something, oh, I'm past that.
Right.
You know, again, I started handing out posters for free concert tickets, and that's how I got into the industry. So,
Same, actually.
yeah, it's a process, and I think it's really good for people to go through that and see, you know, every single dynamic of everything this takes.
Right, definitely. Is it tough to manage a lot of the relationships that you have, like with, I mean, I'm sure you're getting hundreds of emails all the time, agents trying to build an LA date for a tour, or just trying to book one-offs with, you know, local promoters. Is it difficult to kind of manage all of those, and when a big agent or a big band wants to do something, but that date doesn't work, but you want to make it work, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you kind of juggle all of those moving pieces?
Very carefully. It's yeah, no, it can get very intense. As you can imagine, a lot of agents and managers have you know, strong personalities and opinions on how things should work. And
Right.
I definitely pride myself on being able to work with anybody. I think, you know, there are a lot of stresses coming from a lot of different directions, but I try to be as straightforward with people as possible. You know, if there are concerns on our end, or if there are any hangups, or whatever the case is. And I try to be as fast as possible. Try to be as efficient as possible. Hey, you need an offer, you need this and that. I do my best to help accommodate the artist side. So
Nice.
I think it's really case by case, but for the most part, you know, most of the agents that I get to work with are all fantastic people, and, you know, we have the same mentality, and it's I think people come to Golden Voice for a reason.
Right. You have done so much in the last couple of years. Do you have like a proudest moment at the Roxy, or a night that really sticks out in your mind that you were, I mean, the 1975 could be that with the shirt, but
that was a big one. That was definitely a big one. I mean, aside from you know, my career in music, like the 1975 has been one of my favorite bands for so many years, and so to get to do those two underplays at the Roxy around Coachella was like super special. Their whole team was phenomenal to work with. Matt Healy was incredibly nice and genuine when I got to talk to him before the show. Like, that was definitely a special experience. I think the other part that has been really cool is we've done that holiday series, Jingle Bell Roxy.
Yeah.
We've done it for the last 2 years. And I get to work with my friend and colleague, Rene Contreras. He's the promoter for Viva Presents, and he's also part of the Coachella booking team. So he programs the Sonora stage. And that collaboration has been like so much fun. It takes, you know, like I said, we're doing 250 shows a year, and oftentimes you can get kind of caught in the grind of like, okay, another show. And this was like a really cool way to be a little bit more creative, to take kind of like a festival thinking approach to club shows. Right. And make it something a little bit more special. So I would say those runs have been some of the most special things I've gotten to work on.
That's cool. And yeah, that there was a charity component to that as well, right?
Yeah, so we ran a donation drive for the Union Rescue Mission here in downtown LA. I mean, we're able to raise, hundreds and hundreds of donations for the rescue mission, and we have a really good relationship with them. So any opportunity we have to work with them, we're always happy to.
That's cool.
In February, we did a fundraiser with the cast of The Office.
Nice.
It was Creed and Rainn Wilson and a couple other members of the Office cast. They came and did like a Q&A session and stuff, and it was really cool. And that was all for the Australian bushfires. But yeah, I think given this awesome room we have and the platform we have and everything else, every single time that we have the opportunity to help contribite to a great charity, I always have my eyes peeled for that.
Yeah, love that. Do you have a dream kind of lineup or a band that you haven't yet booked that is in your mind that you're still trying to get?
Yes. So I'm from Colorado, and I have some buddies from Colorado. They play in a kind of shoegazy indie band called Gleemer, and they just put out a new record a couple weeks ago. It is fantastic. I highly recommend to anybody that's listening to check it out. It's so good.
Sweet.
And they've done a couple of national support tours, but I don't think they've really done like a proper like headline tour. And they're homies of mine. I think the music's phenomenal. I'm constantly badgering their agent. Hey, what's up? What's going on? when are we doing this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I can definitely say the day that I get Gleemer to play at the Roxy, that's going to be a very, very happy day for me.
Nice. Do you have like a favorite LA venue outside of the Roxy, or even just Southern California?
Oh yeah. I mean, I live downtown, so I definitely frequent the Terragram. I think they do a phenomenal job. I think the venue is just absolutely stunning. I think it's super, super cool.
Agreed.
LA is interesting. It's like, it's such a massive city that, and I talk to agents and artists about this all the time, of like, at a certain point, you could do a Fonda, or you could look at a situation where you do, hey, let's do West Side and East Side, and maybe with TV Girl, for example, they were doing one lodge room and one Roxy. And then that way they get to kind of spread across the city and get, a little bit of a different draw in each one. And I think LA is big enough to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, that's cool. And you had mentioned you work with the Viva Presents person quite a bit. Are you guys planning on doing more things together post-COVID? Keep the relationship alive?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously things are kind of up in the air for the rest of this year, but I would definitely like to figure out a way to kind of keep the Jingle Bell Roxy situation kind of rolling, and maybe that means going to 12 days of digital live streams or something like that. I think we're trying to be a little more creative in that space and see what we can figure out. But
right.
Yeah, without a doubt, we'll be working on some new stuff soon.
Great. And yeah, no, you just touched on it, but I was going to ask what is kind of in the plans for coming up for the Roxy, or do you have an idea of when it's going to reopen, or is it all just kind of waiting on the government?
Completely wait and see mode right now.
Yeah,
I think we're planning for the best case scenario, but also prepared for worst case.
Right.
I definitely have shows confirmed for the fall right now, but I also, frankly, am expecting to have to reschedule those for 2021.
Right.
But the good news is, I think 2021, once we do come back, we are so ready. We have so many great acts confirmed and ready to roll as soon as we have the go ahead. And based on surveys and based on the way that people are reacting, I'm incredibly confident that things are going to come back, basically to full steam once we're able to.
That's great. Is there anything that people can do while quarantine, while COVID is happening, to continue supporting the Roxy?
Frankly, I would support your local independent venues. We're fortunate enough right now to be able to weather this storm for the time being, given our larger corporate structure and everything. But places like the Bootleg, Lodge Room, Terragram, these places, it's a lot more precarious of a position. And so anything you can do to kind of help them, I know they have GoFundMes for their staff. I think that's going to be crucial to maintain the indie landscape of LA music, because I think it's really important for that to continue.
Yeah, agreed. Well said. Well said. Great. And the last thing I like to ask is, what is some of the best piece of advice that you've been given from a mentor, or from somebody as you were coming up in your career?
I don't know about specific advice necessarily, but I will say, I have had some great mentors. My original boss that hired me on at the Larimer Lounge in Denver, he's a promoter for AEG Rocky Mountain in Colorado. His name's Scott Campbell. And he took a risk on me. I had absolutely no music experience outside of playing in local bands. He gave me the opportunity, and I wouldn't be here today without his support in that. So I definitely have to give him props for helping me learn the ropes.
Yeah, I feel like everybody has that the one person who kind of gave him the shot.
I think just paying it forward and trying to help as many people as you can once you do reach that next level. And I think it's really important.
Exactly. Cool. Well, was there anything else you wanted to touch on or mention about anything you got going on?
I don't believe so. No, I think that's probably good.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much. I mean, we're all very excited and eagerly waiting for the doors to reopen, and it's going to be a great 2021. I totally believe that. And hopefully we'll see you real soon in person at the Roxy.
Yes, sir. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Take it easy, Jed.